I almost got stuck on Lanzarote in the start of a global pandemic, and I was actually working as a holiday rep at this point in a hotel called Cinco Plaza, which was located on Lanzarote. And if you don't know where Lanzarote is, it is one of the Canary Islands, and it's a really beautiful place. But this story will take you into the deep ends of a start of a global pandemic. And I would like to just give you some nice backstory just to see how the whole thing started. How I did get to Lanzarote as a start was from my first season. I was working in Crete, where I actually am working right now again. That is how it started. I applied for winter season and I got then Lanzarote, which was actually super cool because I got to work with one of my friends from guide school, Maya. A really happy surprise that we are gonna meet again after not seeing each other since the guide school. Was super cool. The life in Lanzarote was really cool. It's a super good destination that I highly recommend you to work in or visit because it's a very unique volcanic place. But let's get started with the episode, so to say, and dive into the days before. And the days before started pretty normal. And we've just heard about there is a virus going around. And because we are in the middle of nowhere, so to say, we are on an island. We're like, okay, we don't have to worry really because this is not affecting us because, we're in the middle of nowhere. It wasn't until first that we actually started people are getting a little bit sick from nowhere. And this was starting to worry some of our reps and myself also about the destination because, all right, this might be real, And we actually see on the news the coming days that the numbers are increasing in Lanzarote rapidly and people are starting to get worried. And me myself also because I'm getting worried about my guests, and they are worried and I'm just trying to keep everyone calm that the situation is all right now. We're just trying to figure out what is happening. I actually got ill myself a few days later and I had a really high fever and I had to be in my bed. I couldn't do much. And actually, because there was restrictions, you're not allowed to go out because of the government told you if you're sick, you're staying inside for at least 3 days. And I was like, all right. And at this point, you didn't even have tests and stuff like that. That was non-existent at that point. So literally, you just called a number and a doctor would answer and you tell him your symptoms and he's like, yes, you have it or you don't have it. All right. That's how simple it was. He told me I don't. So I'm sure. I never had it since. So maybe. But anyway, 3 days lasted and I came back to the resort. But in these 3 days, there was a lot of things that actually happened. It was that guests had booked now normal 1 to 2 weeks of holiday. But the difference was because of the global pandemic that we had here, they are not allowed to get out of their rooms if not necessary. So the guests had to spend their whole holiday in the room or by the balcony or the terrace because you're not allowed to use the facilities or the pool or anything. Everything is closed. So the only thing you could do was basically one person at a time goes out, they get the food from the restaurant and give it to their family. All right. So then they have to eat it on their room. And that is how it worked out. And if you did need something from the supermarket, of course, then you are allowed to go to the supermarket one person at a time. But you are allowed to only actually then go to the supermarket or the pharmacy and nothing else. Because if you did and you get caught, then you would get fined by the police. These fines were pretty huge, actually. They were 300 euros for just being on the street on a place that you're not supposed to be, basically. It's nothing that my company or the hotel is forcing the people to stay inside. It's actually the government told us that this is the rules. You're not leaving the rooms. And I'm like, whoa, And because I was working, I had no other choice. So we were staying in reception the whole time. We can't go and leave the reception, basically. So that's where we were all the time. And of course, guests could sometimes come and ask us stuff, obviously. And if they needed us, they can always call and message us. So we were always on alert if it is something that they need. So if the guest did not follow the rules, the hotel would get fined, plus the guest, and vice versa. So it was very good if everyone just held it back on or like following the restrictions. It was a really tough time because no one obviously wants to be on holiday and closed into your room. But everyone did get the choice of if they want to go and risk, or they want to stay home and get like a refund or book later on, something like that. So everyone did have the choice, all right? But let's jump into the day where it happened, all right? So the day came around, and this is the day where everything went like crazy, all right? We are waiting for rescue flights at this point. And even us as reps, we are waiting our rescue flights to get home because normal flights are not going anymore. So everything is with rescue flights. And obviously, because we are the hotel reps and the reps for this big company, we are getting all of the guests home first. So no guests will be left behind without us. So we are the ones going home last, so to say. But still, we're waiting for our rescue flights and tickets like that. And this day started pretty normal. I was going to start working at 11, but my colleague calls me in the morning and he's like, "Hi Kevin, can you just go up to the hotel because I have 2 UKs there that they really need to get to the airport now because their evening flight is cancelled and they're going with this rescue flight. Can you please tell them to get ready and pack?" I'm like, all right. So I just throw my clothes on, get to the hotel, like running there, knock their door, find a room number, knock their door, and they're actually already starting to pack. And because they got the news, because he called me because he couldn't reach the guests. But by the time I got there, they had called back, or he got to reach them eventually. So I tell them, okay, you guys get ready. I'll run down to reception and book you a taxi. And I get to reception. The taxi says, yeah, it's going to be like 5-10 minutes. All right, perfect. So we stand outside and we wait. And we wait. And for like 10, 15, 20 minutes, we are waiting. By the time these times are going, I've called this taxi company already like 3 times. All right. And eventually they tell me, okay, we don't have any taxis. I'm like, but I've been waiting for one. I booked one. And like, no, we don't have any taxis because all of the taxis apparently have been taken on the whole island, because all of the taxis on the island are going to the airport because everyone is going with the rescue flights. And I'm like, oh shit, you know? So I need to find a way to get my guests to the airport. I'm not allowed to take them in our own cars. So I get a brilliant idea. I run down to the strip, or like it's called the main road where all the bars are. And this is a guarantee place basically to find a taxi usually. And I've never seen such an empty place. I was like, what is this? There was nothing. Okay. There was like a few guests waiting around on the streets and waiting for taxis. Otherwise there was no cars. There was nothing. It was like a ghost city. I was like, what is going on here? And I run around here trying to find taxis. Everyone is taken because everyone has booked those taxis already. Eventually, there comes a taxi, and I'm like in the middle of the road. I'm waving him in to get a taxi for me, so to say. And there's another guest, or not my guest, but it's tourists. All right, they're trying to take my taxi here, and they're like grabbing the door, and I'm like, yo, I have waited for this taxi for a long time, and I have a really big emergency, all right? I need this taxi ASAP to the airport with my guests. So you let that door go, and I will help my guests to the airport. And she's like, all right, yeah, da, 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 da. So yes, no fighting, all right? So that's pretty crazy. It wasn't that serious as it sounds, but all right, I had to like take the command and say like, all right, this is my taxi right now. And I come back to the hotel, I get my guests into the taxi, and whoop, it goes. Finally. And this is the point where I see my colleague coming in, because I see on the watch, oh, it's 11 o'clock, and my colleague starts her shift now. And she's pretty confused because she sees me on the road, just waving off the taxi. And I'm a bit sweaty and stuff, and I come up to her and I tell her the story of what's going on. So I've been working already since the morning here. This took a lot of time, and the guests eventually came to the airport. Very nice. So how eventually did I come home then is the big question. And that is actually the same day that all of this other stuff happened, I get a call from my team leader. And she's like, you need to be in the airport around 1:30, all right? And I'm still working in the hotel at this point. I'm having service and reception. And she's like, yeah, there might be a rescue flight for you to Stockholm, and you need to get on this flight. I'm like, all right. So I run home, I pack all my stuff, and I couldn't really clean my apartment like a deep clean. So I just took whatever necessary and threw every trash out and stuff like that, but no deep clean, which is something you usually have to do. But in this situation, I do feel like it was all right. Okay. And I come to the airport eventually, and they tell me at the check-in desk, there is no space. And I'm like, what? We have to wait. So me and my 3 colleagues that was there, we have to wait to see if there is going to be availability on this flight. And I'm like, oh no, we're never going to come on. This is like, we have to go home again. And then it would be like 3 days, I think, before next rescue flight would come. And my other colleagues actually came to the airport also, which was very unexpected. And they also said like, yeah, we're supposed to go on this flight. And now we're around 10 people on this waiting list. We're waiting for a long time actually before we can get any announcements. But eventually we do get an announcement, and they say that 4 people can go on board. And it was us 4 that waited first, not the others. And that's when we hugged everyone. We dropped a few tears, some of us, and just to say goodbye and hope that everything goes well, because we really hoped that they could be on this flight with us. And it was a very emotional moment for everyone. And I think we even took some pictures. We did have time for pictures, you know. Then we boarded. And when we had boarded, I then see some of my colleagues that they have actually got on board. And that was like a woohoo moment, because we all got on board on the flight. And that is a really cool moment that we all made it. And after that, the flight home was pretty all right. We eventually landed in Stockholm. So even if you were from Denmark or Norway or anything, you would go on this Stockholm flight, because it was basically the only chance we had. I had to take at this point, because we landed in the middle of the night, and I live like in Malmö, which is south, and this is Stockholm. And I had to take the night train, so I had to book a ticket there. And my colleague, which is living in a closer city, he also booked the night train. But I booked myself a cabin so I could sleep, because the train to my city takes roughly 8 hours on this train. So I was like, okay, I'm going to sleep, because I couldn't really sleep on the flight. We sit on the train together and have fun. And then then eventually I went to my cabin. For my surprise, it was pretty cool actually to get your own cabin to sleep in on a train. And I had a whole cabin for myself, good enough, because no one else would be able to fit in this cabin anyway, because I had 2 huge suitcases and backpacks. So the whole cabin was just filled with my stuff. So there was no chance that anyone would fit anyway. So I had to sleep on the top shelf, so to say, to actually fit myself. So that was really cool. I've never slept on a train before. So that was really nice experience that I can recommend to anyone if you are going on the train or night train between Stockholm and Malmo and stuff like that. I eventually come home from all this, a bit shocking. And when I think back on this adventure that I was with, it's pretty cool. And I guess that many of you guys have like insane stories of the early days of the pandemic, or actually like after or in between and everything. And I would really appreciate it if you guys tell your stories down in the comments if you've been listening this far, because it would be super interesting to hear them or talk about them in a future episode. This is then the story of how I almost got stuck in Lanzarote. Very intense story. For me, I have many other stories that I can share about. Maybe not pandemic-wise, well, maybe, but other like holiday rep stories about my seasons. There's so many things I can talk about. So if you guys are interested in that, please let me know. And I would like to thank you very much for listening here to the end. And if you haven't already, I would ask you to put a review on this episode or this channel/podcast. And you can just give us a review, put down in the comments what you think. And if you're watching the video version, please subscribe to the channel and do the same in the comments, because I would really appreciate knowing what you like about the podcast. I hope you have a really good time now when everything is starting slowly to get back to normal, and the travel goes well and it's super cool. And I would just say that being a hotel rep or holiday rep is an amazing experience that I cannot recommend enough to anyone. It's something I've done for several years now, and I just love it. There is its ups and downs like every job, but this has been so different, and you get so many experiences and work life and experiences. Like, it changed my life basically, and I hope that it can do the same for you. And if you are already working in this industry, I think you are agreeing with me that it is actually a life-changing thing to work with something like this in this industry. So that is enough for today. And I want to thank you very much again for listening to the end of this podcast. And I hope you're going to have an absolutely fantastic rest of your day. And I'll see you in the next episode. So have a good day again. And thank you. Goodbye.